Mexico 2016, are you on this conference call right now? Because if you are, I think you're about a year late from what happened in your race. Because in the US, we had yet another podium problems where people had to change positions. Yeah, Max Verstappen got kicked off the podium for Kimi Räikkönen. And in this episode, as promised in the Mexico preview show, we are going to be talking about that. Now, ever since it happened, we saw it happen on Sunday, we saw the uproar, we saw the tweet, we saw the stewards coming out with their side, and basically everything has just exploded. It's a massive, massive thing. It's kind of double standards. It's kind of, did Max deserve it? It's kind of, are they against Verstappen? Are they, what is going on with the stewards? Obviously, in this episode, we're going to be tackling all of that. Who was at fault for this decision? Was anybody at fault? Should Max have taken the penalty? Did he deserve it? Did Räikkönen deserve to be on the podium? And basically, what had happened? Anyway, so I'm just going to go over the brief facts about what had happened. Like we like to say at the F1 Debate Show, if you've been living under a rock with your fingers in your ears and you didn't see the race on Sunday, well, it wasn't like you missed loads. But the last lap, you missed quite a talking point, which will go on for a very, very long time. Almost as long as the train places has gone over. Actually, do you know what? That might have even overtaken it now that Max has comfortably hit Red Bull and Fiat is out. So what happened at the US race in 2017? It was a big show, by the way, just on a side note. Very big show. You had people like Usain Bolt there. Obviously, the boxing presenter, Michael Buffer, was announcing the drivers. Leaving the comments, did you like that? Did you think that was a really cool thing that Formula 1 did? I personally liked it as well. So what happened in the last lap? So obviously Lewis Hamilton was out there and he was going to win the race. Amazing race by him. Sebastian Vettel was chasing him down. Not a great race by him. I mean, they did everything right. He put the cars exactly where he needed them to be in the race. But obviously, Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes were a dominant form. And Kimi Räikkönen was in third place. Max Verstappen, who was having quite a good race behind, obviously gaining around half a second a lap, was about a second behind Kimi Räikkönen going into the final lap. So obviously he thought, Dutch driver thought, okay, I'm going to catch Kimi Räikkönen now. So obviously Kimi was kind of sliding off the pace. Max was on a charge, and as you know, when Max is on a charge, Max is on a charge. He will take positions left, right and centre. We all remember the amazing drive he did in Brazil of 2016, gaining 17 positions in just under 2 laps as well. Really great. So he was catching Kimi Räikkönen, did so, but in sector 3, on the very much the right-handed part of the circuit, it looked like he kind of cut the corner, but there was also a little bit that you could have thought that Kimi Räikkönen kind of pushed him, but nevertheless, Max got round. He came into the penultimate corner ahead of Kimi Räikkönen, got the pass, got the overtake, and he got himself into third place. Fantastic by Red Bull. They got one Red Bull, one Ferrari, and one Mercedes on the podium, so it was all looking good on that side. When the cars were in Parc Ferme, it came on the screen at the bottom that Max Verstappen had been given a 5-second time penalty, which would be added to his time at the end of the race. This was the end of the race at this time. He was around 4 seconds in front of Kimi Räikkönen when they finished the race, so you can just see how much it actually gained in that very short time as well. All the cars are in Parc Ferme. Obviously, Lewis is celebrating with people like Usain Bolt and his team. Obviously, amazing that they won the constructors. Sebastian Vettel, not great from him. Looked like this was his last chance to win, and he very much has kind of blown the championship out of he's blown the championship away, obviously, as we talked about in Mexico. Max went on the podium, so it was quite good from him, and obviously, as you saw, all the tweets that come in, obviously, in the background in the drivers' debriefing room. Obviously, that's quite a good feature, but obviously people were promoting Max Verstappen, saying that it was a good race from him, basically he pulled that Red Bull around the circuit. Obviously, he started in 16th position, so 16th to 3rd in a very hectic race, in a very tight, great. I mean, it was a good race by the two Red Bulls. Obviously, a bit unfortunate for Daniel Ricciardo having to retire, but it's a good track that suits Red Bull. But from 16th to 3rd, that was great. So Max had done a great race to get to 3rd position. People were praising him. He was driver of the day for sure. Again, it came up there when they were in the drivers' debriefing room. But then the camera pans to Kimi Räikkönen. He's not happy at all. He's walking through with his race engineer. He wants to know what is happening. And then someone from the FIA comes up just as Max Verstappen gets his cap on, and just about as they're going on the podium, whispers in his ear. He also brings another personnel from Red Bull up to the room, and then Max Verstappen goes out the back doors, downstairs, and he is now off as Kimi Räikkönen goes onto the podium. So obviously what happened there is that Max Verstappen with his time penalty had gone just over 1 second behind Kimi Räikkönen in the classifications, meaning that he dropped back to 4th position. Kimi Räikkönen then was promoted to 3rd because of what Max Verstappen allegedly cut the corner, and then so he had two Ferraris and the Mercedes on the podium. And that is not really very fair on Max Verstappen. And as I said at the start, Formula One, social media and everything just blew up. The proportion was out of the water, and I mean, this is a massive thing that really happened. So it's going to take us a long time to kind of get to what we think. Was Max to blame? Was Kimi to blame? For knocking into him? Obviously, we'll explain that a little bit more in this episode. Was the FIA to blame, being slow on decisions? We all know how quite slow the FIA have been on decisions. For example, over the years, we've had, different scenarios. For example, like Sebastian Vettel overtaking Jensen Button on the last lap of the 2012 German Grand Prix. Obviously, he had to give the position back, but that was only done, just before, again, they went on the podium. Even in that race, Valtteri Bottas made a pass on Daniel Ricciardo, all four wheels off the track, but that managed to stand. The Mexican Grand Prix last year, again, obviously the switching positions on the podium when the Mercedes cut the corner on the first lap. So, the FIA stewards have been quite slow to decisions in the past. But in this decision, have they made a bit of an error by giving Max, by kicking him off the podium? So I'm just going to bring in Jordan, quite a simple question just to get the ball rolling. Do you think Max should have been allowed to stay on the podium? Do you think it was a legal overtake? Or do you agree with the stewards and that Kimi Räikkönen should have, he deserved to be on the podium for such a good race? And as I say, it was a bit of a dirty overtake by Verstappen.
Well, first of all, I think there's just going to be loads of obviously opinions about this. No, there's never going to be like an official final answer as to the actual conclusion to this. Now, I've got multiple answers to those sort of questions. Now, I'm going to start with the move itself. Forget about the race, the overall move. Was it illegal? Yes, it was. All four wheels were off the track when he overtook Kimi Räikkönen. That's against FIA regulations, of course it is. So for that pure reason, is the penalty illegal? Yes, it should have been applied. However, other drivers were also doing it during the race. Not only during the race, but also qualifying as well as practice. It happened quite a lot this weekend. Now, obviously, if you have all four wheels over the white line, and you obviously gain an advantage, which 9 times out of 10 you're going to, the FIA will say, okay, you can't do that lap again. You've got to give the position back, or we're going to give you a drive-through or a time penalty, as seen in the Grand Prix. Obviously, every so often, if you do go wide and obviously all four wheels off the track, obviously, say if you lock up and you go straight onto the corner, you're not going to gain any time, because obviously you've got to then turn around and come back onto the track, and then obviously you've lost quite a bit of time. But with the Max Verstappen situation, as like I was saying, obviously all four wheels off the track, and then I'm agreeing the penalty should have stood. But you're probably thinking, well, you don't sound like that you agree with that. And I'm thinking it shouldn't have been given, as like I said, because obviously everyone else was doing that. And I just want to say as well that if this was for, let's say if Pascal Wehrlein had did that on Marcus Ericsson on the last lap, he wouldn't have got a penalty. I know fine well he wouldn't have, because the centre of attention was on Hamilton. The centre of attention, obviously, with him winning the race, and obviously other drivers coming in second and third. Everyone would have been focusing purely on who was coming where, second, third, or fourth. But now, as I said, if he had overtaken, there could have been a bit of a debate where you could say, okay, should have Pascal, really should have overtook there, but it wouldn't have been for any points. It would have been for a podium position. So no one didn't really bothered. So obviously they will allow that to go, but because it was right at the end, it was right there. All the media attention was purely on that specific moment, and it was for a podium position where Max Verstappen overtook him for obviously for racing instinct as well, to go outside off the track essentially, and I think that's purely why they gave him a penalty, was because it was for a podium position. Obviously what they were racing for. Now, if you cut back to a couple of years ago in Belgium 2015, when Max Verstappen performed that amazing overtake on former Sauber driver Felipe Nasr at Blanchimont. I mean, that was an incredible overtake. Let's not forget that, guys. But what Max Verstappen did was that he had all four wheels off the circuit. He didn't get a time penalty whatsoever, and that overtake was awarded overtake of the season, guys. And all four wheels were off the track, exactly the same as to what happened to him against Kimi Räikkönen. So why was he penalised for USA 2017 and he wasn't for Belgium 2015? So that was a bit strange. Also as well, I just want to point out that the head steward, Mika Salo, was also the same steward who kicked Max off the podium at Mexico 2016, which is what Lau mentioned at the start of the video. again, it was a very confusing race because not only one driver but two drivers got kicked off the podium during the race, and Christian Horner went absolutely crazy at the stewards. They were like, "What the hell? What the hell's going on here?" They can't make their minds up, and there's a bit of tension, but then it just kind of died down. Now all of a sudden this has been raised up again. So obviously going purely back on that moment in USA, if my opinion would be is Max Verstappen shouldn't be given a penalty whatsoever. It was a penalised. Yes, he was coming off the track. He was awful worse off the track on an overtaking move. However, other drivers should have been penalised in practice and qualifying, and Max Verstappen, was penalised for that move, but everyone else did. Gaining time or whatever. Like Bottas did it, Ricciardo did it, Vettel did it, Verlaine did it in qualifying. He did it in practice, I believe as well. Grosjean did it, Magnussen did it. A lot of these drivers, exploited the limits of the track. Didn't get anything for it. Max Verstappen did, and that is just harsh. I would say it's a stupid decision. I would say, if you're the head steward and if you're being employed to become the head steward, you should be fair with everyone else. And also as well, guys, that one of the stewards as well who helped make that decision was also part of the Ferrari team back in the day. I think that might have been Mika Salo. I think he was a former Ferrari driver or former Ferrari personnel. So favouring the Ferrari team, a bit funny that, isn't it? That's what a lot of people were saying. And Jos Verstappen, Max Verstappen's dad, came out on Twitter and heavily criticised the stewards for that. I mean, I thought it was a fake account at first, but obviously it clearly wasn't. He didn't hold back. But if I had to, if I had to say, I would say it should have been a time penalty. He should have kept the podium position. It was purely racing instinct. Raikkonen, it was defend his line, but then Max Verstappen had to sort of back away to avoid a collision. But then people could be saying, well, okay, Max Verstappen should have just lifted there and just backed out of the move. Well, no, because he's a racer. Why should he do that? Go for the gap, and if the gap's closed, then you just go, okay, I'm just gonna sneak him by there, and you got that's racing at the end of the day. That's purely racing. That's also what Max Verstappen said. It's just been absolutely so confusing. I think it's a ridiculous decision. Max Verstappen should have had the podium position. He should have kept it. And obviously none of this would have happened. But obviously now the stewards made their mind up. It was absolutely ridiculous. I would say what they decided. So Lyle, question back to you. Obviously, just answering. I mean, do you think it was a penalty? Do you think it was right? Do you think it was wrong? And also as well, Max Verstappen's antics at the end of the race, like for example when he gave the interview, he criticised the stewards heavily. He called them idiots. He called them stupid. He called them slow. Now, do you think that has kind of dented a little bit of reputation for Max Verstappen with the stewards as well, and also as well like a bit of trust amongst him and the fans as well, because I mean he's blastering somebody who obviously one of the hierarchies who can just go, right, okay, I'm gonna give you a race ban for that. He's got to be professional and just keep his his opinions to himself in that sort of way. So do you think Max Verstappen on the interviews was a bit out of control because of that? What do you think?
Yeah, so just on the topic of the interviews. Now, for example, like let's use an example of like football. Let's say, so when obviously a team that you support, let's say you're watching the team that you support, and then one of your players brings down the other player. Let's just say even of a rival team, and then it's a claim. It's a dirty tackle, but it is for sure a penalty. It's been done in the box. It's a penalty. But then obviously because you support that team, you the one who's going to be. Not, who hasn't got the penalty, you are obviously going to be enraged. You're going to be saying, that's fair, that's not right. You're going to be having to go, even though deep down you actually believe you know that it is. Obviously, whatever, even if it's the right decision in football, you're going to say it's wrong because of your team. And I think that's a little bit like what Max is doing. Now, obviously, the penalty is stood, and it also comes down a little bit like kind of don't backchat the people who are like above you. I mean, obviously, I know he's not a child, he's not at school, but in Formula 1, the FIA is the guy who runs it. It's a little bit like when Sebastian Vettel told Charlie, when he said, I have something to tell Charlie, and obviously, swore at him on the radio. That it's a little bit like that, because that is almost like when a child tells a teacher, that language, that says that to that. So Max Verstappen, I think how he came across in the interviews, and I know what you mean, I think when he came across in the interviews, I think he was very one-sided, and he was very much like, biting of what the FIA did. He felt all that pressure on him from the fans. Obviously we know all the fans were going ballistic. They didn't like it. Obviously, Max Verstappen has a massive following, so they didn't like the decision. So then Max had to feel like, okay, well, I have to retaliate. I have to say something. Even my own dad he's biting on the FIA, so obviously I have to say something. And then kind of having to go at them in that way, it isn't good from him, because I think maybe not as fans that will lose respect of him, but I think kind of he might lose a little bit in terms of what the FIA think of him. To be honest, if I had to put it in context, it might almost be the same as what Sebastian Vettel did. When he told him that language. I'm not saying obviously Max didn't do that. Well, I know he had to go at them and say call them idiots and things like that.
Yeah.
He didn't swear at them, but it just comes back to that thing of respect. It was the FIA's decision. If you didn't agree with it, just walk away. It's like you don't argue with the referee well, you see, for example, like rugby players. One of the best things about rugby players is they don't argue with the referee. Football players, they're around for referees all the time, saying things to them. But with rugby players, it is very much like, you understand and they go away. That's why when they have microphones on, you can hear what the players are saying. And normally it's, yeah, I understand, sir, and then they'll go away, and then that penalty will stand. So I think Max Verstappen should have just accepted it, said that he didn't agree with it, but just rolled on. Because again, as another example, Jordan, as another example, it's a bit like Lewis Hamilton in Baku. When that brake test went on, obviously Lewis was really annoyed that Sebastian Vettel didn't get a harsher penalty, because obviously it was like, a very, very much like thing again. It wasn't a move that was in the laws of anything really, but Lewis Hamilton kept a cool head and he didn't say much about it. So I don't think Max went on very well in the press conferences. That's one thing though, but because obviously he will felt really, really annoyed by that. It probably comes into Mexico, because as he did that, he probably got a reminder from Mexico that he was obviously kicked off the podium from that. He was involved in that kerfuffle, and it was like, oh, not again. Again, as you said, Jordan, it comes back to that double standard thing that the FIA, they saw people do that in qualifying and in the race, and they decided to punish Max Verstappen. But one of the things that also got me is that, I know what I'm going to say, it sounds a bit like, it doesn't matter if he doesn't win, at least he tried. That kind of like that ridiculous thing that they say at school, which is like, it's not the winning that counts, it's a taking part. I know it's going to sound like that, but it's like Max Verstappen, he starts in 16th position, okay? He gains all that, he gains all that ground that he's made. Obviously the team have helped with the pit stop strategies. He is such a ferocious fighter, and obviously, as I say, Red Bull love that track. He was the only Red Bull in that circuit, obviously after Daniel Ricciardo had his problem with the engine, and as I say, he was such in a form, and as I say, he was half a second a lap catching Kimi Räikkönen. He was catching him on lap 56. He wasn't going to, as I say, he was making so much of a charge, gaining all that position, and it was like he did one little mistake, and as John said, it was obviously Kimi Räikkönen was on his line. Max is not going to lift, because obviously it comes back to that famous saying that Ayrton Senna said, if you see a gap, if you don't go for a gap, if you no longer go for a gap that exists, you're not a racing driver. Because obviously that is very much true. That gap was closing, but Max Verstappen, as you know, from Formula 1 drivers, they can see the little tiny gap, and also where is he going to go? Because lifting almost proves that you're not going to be in Formula 1 anymore. It's like, you may as well not even bother. So in that sense, I agree with Jordan that, he, one, what was he going to do? Two, he wasn't going to lift. And also as well, just a little thing, it did look like Kimi Räikkönen was holding his line a little bit too much, that if he saw him in his mirrors, I'm not saying, deviate from your line to let him pass, but I don't know, just maybe on one little angle it did look like he was going in quite ferociously, but as he was in the lead at that time. But that's the thing, it's like he was gaining so much position, he was gaining so much ground, he had a nice clean race all the way up to that point. And because of the double standard thing, again, that I mentioned earlier, why would the FIA decide that, he's gained, obviously, 13 positions, 12 at that point, obviously 13 when he finished third in the actual race. Why would the steward think he's gained 12 positions, he's been fighting like hell, he's been gaining on Kimi Räikkönen, and the team and him have put in such a great effort, and he is now driver of the day. Why would then they think that we're going to, again, annoy all the other, like, cuts, corners and things like that, and give Max the penalty from that? It's a little bit like double standard, it's a little bit like, singling them out, and if anything, it's a little bit like systematically bullying Max, in that sense, really, and bullying Red Bull, and it's just, it hasn't really paid in. There's a lot of different factors in it. It's not, I don't want to say it's bullying, like, directly, but in that decision, they could have done a lot more things about it. One of my favourite races in Formula 1, obviously, is the 2012 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, where Sebastian Vettel climbs from 24th to third position. So just imagine if that happened to Seb, if he'd climbed, 11 positions to third place, and then they decided, if let's say he went off the track just a smidge, just like a second or two, not a second or two, like a tenth of a second. Yeah. If he went off the track just a little bit, just imagine how distraught himself and Red Bull would feel if they said, okay, Seb, we're going to give you a penalty back again. We're not going to let you on the podium, which obviously was his goal at that time, because again it was 2012. He was in a fight for the championship, which obviously Abu Dhabi at that point was the penultimate round. So just imagine if that had happened then, and obviously there's other counts, but it just because Max was on such a charge. And because of the double standard again that you mentioned, John, about it happened other times in the race. I just don't think it was right for the stewards to just jump on Max in that that way, to get him off the podium, kind of make an example of him. If anything, it actually might have even been a way of kind of covering their own tracks, because like what you said, about them not noticing when people have done it in qualifying and the race. They might have thought, oh my God, well, people at home, the FOM, people are going to be catching up on this. Bernie Ecclestone's going to be having a field day, laughing his head off at Formula 1 now, thinking, oh my God, Chase, you're missing this, you're missing that, what's going on? But, so maybe it's them covering themselves, if you get what I mean. Maybe it's them covering themselves and thinking, right, okay, we have mucked up so much in this weekend. Oh my God, Max has actually done a mistake. Right, we'll penalise him. And then also he's off the podium. The cameras are going to be on the podium. Obviously the cameras are going to be on Max and Kimi, two big drivers. And then we're going to make an example of him almost in front of everybody. And yeah, maybe it is just that really. And obviously because they had the whole attention. It's a little bit like what you said, Jordan, about Pascal and Marcus. If they had that kerfuffle, because nobody would have watched Sauber do it. It would have all been on the cameras. And that's one of the other reasons I was thinking maybe the FIA have just kind of made an example. Maybe you thought, right, we've missed up on so much in this race. If we get these two drivers, it's going to be like, oh, we've actually finally done something right. Nobody's going to be on our backs, and we can roll into Mexico. And because again they made a mistake in Mexico. Remember this time last year they made a mistake in Mexico, and then this time they can be like, right, we've actually made a good decision by doing this. The world's watching. They don't think we're idiots anymore. Obviously, as I say, Mika Salo, you made a mistake in Mexico. You can rectify that in the US. I just think maybe there was a hint of making Max an example. Maybe he was just the unlucky guinea pig in this kind of FIA experiment. John, I know that sounds quite strange, but yeah. Do you think that? Because, I mean, for example, like in football, I know I keep making references to football, yeah. But there was a game on the other day, and I've forgotten what happened, but there was a foul, and the referee just kind of brushed over it, yeah. And then there was another foul, and it was like the most ridiculous foul ever. It was like one of the guys had pushed someone's shoulder. It was ridiculous, but then the referee jumped on it straight away, and then gave a free kick. And it was almost, when I was watching that game, it was almost like he's done that to cover himself because of that, not giving just giving a warning and no kind of advantage for that foul earlier on. So do you think the FIA have done, kind of made Max an example, made him a guinea pig of this race, for any other reasons under the sun? But do you think they've made obviously they made the wrong decision and made him like the example so that the world can see that the FIA haven't just, kind of ignored everything else in the weekend, like you said, with all the other corner cuts?
Well, it's certainly an interesting question, I would say, because, well, judging from what you've seen, you would definitely expect that maybe that the FIA have just sort of as I said, cover their tracks in this really bad decision making that they've made. Just obviously punishing Max Verstappen at the end. But what really annoyed me, right, is obviously this situation is really, really annoying. But Max Verstappen said after the comments he made that he got a penalty point, and I don't know if he got a fine or something like that. I'm not too sure, for his actions, not for the criticising. For the what was it? Obeying the track limits. I'm like, what? Hang on a second. So hang on, he's been kicked off the podium and now he's got a penalty point. I'm like, no bloody wonder he's absolutely fuming. But judging on what you were saying about the referee thing as well, just going back to that, the situation that Max Verstappen has had here is exactly the same in a football match. I know we are referring to football, but we are football fans here on the F1 Show. Where there's been loads of tackles everywhere, left, right, and centre. There's been a tackle here. Okay, he's getting a free kick, but nothing's happening. Another tackle, nothing. Another tackle, no free kick, no free kick, no free kick. Somebody goes into the penalty box, takes him down in exactly the same manner. Whoop, penalty. What? Player sent off, and they score the winning goal right at the end. That's like the equivalent of what happened with Max Verstappen. There was loads of tackles flying left, right, and centre. Max Verstappen goes to the same tackle in the box, gets a penalty, gets demoted, and he loses out on the podium position, which is like it was literally so unfair because from 16th to P3, what an unbelievable drive it was, and for the FIA just to go, we'll take the podium away from you. But obviously from 16th to 4th, that's still a very impressive drive, but he worked hard. He worked hard for that podium. That's pretty much one of your aims. If you can't really fight for the win, you can go, okay, the best thing we can achieve this weekend is the podium position. So Red Bull knew that even if the Mercedes both retired, or if Hamilton did anyways, he had a chance of winning the race, but obviously that was never going to happen because obviously the reliability of the Mercedes. So he knew that we can get a podium position, obviously halfway through the race when he's gaining their positions. So the strategists did their work. Obviously, his team engineer did his work. He did his work, looking after the tyres, looking after the car, making sure that he got finished the race in one piece. He did all the hard work, and then obviously overtook him the way he did, and obviously just for them to go, right, okay, we're going to punish you. So maybe the FIA need to change these rules and maybe say, okay, maybe try and give drivers the benefit of the doubt in certain occasions. It doesn't matter it doesn't matter if it's for the race win, if it's for the podium, if it's for points, or if it's just for another position. Because as like I was saying, the only reason they've done this is because it matters to somebody. For example, if you were, I don't know, it's like, actually touching on what I was saying before, as I was saying with Verlaine and Ericsson, if one was fighting for P15, it's not going to make a difference in the championship. He's just overtook him. He's not going to go any higher than him. He's not going to gain any points. And that's the FIA would have honestly went, we want nothing to do with that. And because how big the situation was, they've done that. So maybe the FIA need to change the rules, and obviously, as I said, just be a little bit more lenient, a little bit more caring as to what happens if a driver is getting penalised for fighting for the podium position. Then all the other guys should be penalised as well, and just working like that. Now we know that the FIA is under massive pressure to try and scrap these engine regulations, the engine penalties that everyone's getting, because I mean when Brendan Hartley came in the US Grand Prix, he had a 25 minutes grid penalty even before he sat in the car, so that was just ridiculous. It's like, hang on a minute, how on earth could Brendan get a penalty for that, even though he hasn't even participated in a race weekend at all? Anyway, he wasn't even involved in that. So the rules are just so complicated, and this is why we are losing fans in Formula 1, and this is why that nobody is willing to come into Formula 1 as a fan, because of all these stupid all these stupid rules and regulations. So I mean, it's just a really confusing decision. It's really confusing situation. I'll stand by my point. Max Verstappen should have not been given a penalty, even though it was a penalty decision. What he did was illegal. However, everyone else did it, and they got away with it. Max Verstappen should have got away with it, and he should have been one of the podium. FIA absolutely, I would say, useless, rubbish. Definitely biased. I would say, why not? Because obviously one of them worked for Ferrari. He's got close connections to Ferrari. This is the second time he's done this. So if Mick Salo is ever on head stewards, get him out. Don't even bother employing him again for this. And also as well, maybe try and educate the stewards a bit more so that they are more prepared for a situation like this. Because for Mexico, it was just like, what do we do? I don't know what to do. I'm really confused. Okay, Max Verstappen overtake, right, penalty straight away. No thought about it. And also as well, guys, Max Verstappen can't appeal to that. He can't say, well, in our defence, let's show you this, because that's breaking the rules. And they're like, no, we've got our say. Whatever we say is final. That rule should definitely change. I would say so. Red Bull should come to them and go, okay, we've got this proof to say Max Verstappen should have been allowed at this podium. Give him the position back. Then they would have said, okay, we'll reinstate your points. So then, and then in the tables, Max Verstappen will get awarded points. Kim Raikkonen will then get deducted points, and then he will get an extra podium added to his stats. So Red Bull should have definitely been allowed to appeal. They can't, and I think that's why Max Verstappen shouldn't have really said anything in the interviews, because there's nothing he could have done that would have changed anything, and probably just made him a bit of a target for the stewards. So in the next race, Max Verstappen should really be on his best behaviour. And well, let's see if he is. But Lyle, just touching on what I was saying about Red Bull not being able to appeal their decision. I mean, do you think that Red Bull should be allowed to do that, or do you think that's just like a rule. Okay, you know, the rule book stops at the FIA. The decision stops there, and it shouldn't go any further than that. Do you think Red Bull should be allowed to do that, or do you think the way it's run now, where teams should be able to appeal? What do you think?
I think it's fair enough to say that Red Bull should be allowed to appeal. I think everyone, you know, has the right. For example, like, let's use another example, but it isn't football this time. Well, it's American football. Let's use an example like it's American football. The obviously, if you watch it, the people, the coordinators on the team, kind of like the coaches, they have flags that they can chuck onto the field, and that basically obviously flags a play, and that's their way of saying, okay, we're going to basically say that play wasn't allowed, illegal, and they're going to challenge the decision of the referee. For example, you know, like, let's say, you know, the QB chucks it to the wide receiver. It's a pass complete. But if they think that he stepped over the line, they'll chuck a flag onto the play. As Jordan said, you know, they're using this is a Formula 1 example. That is them appealing the decision. So obviously, for example, like in this situation, obviously the play was Max Verstappen driving in the race. The Red Bull are there should be the coordinators who have chucked the flag, you know, appealing the decision by the referee, the FIA. Obviously they're allowed to do that in American football, and if it's allowed, you know, that's it. That's almost them saying, well, they haven't got the dam, they haven't done the complete pass, they've done it illegally. Okay, let's just scrap that again and you know, move the play on again. If it's fourth down, let's turn the ball over. So in that way, they're allowed to appeal, and in many ways, you're allowed to appeal decisions. And I think that basically saying that Red Bull, they're not allowed to flag, they're not allowed to appeal this decision, is not right by the FIA. Yeah. It puts under more strain that they've used Max Verstappen and Red Bull Racing now as a whole. Because obviously, I said before that, you know, it was just Max Verstappen used as a guinea pig. It's now Red Bull Racing, but I don't know why. I don't know what Red Bull have done to really aggravate them. You know, it should be, I mean, I don't know, shouldn't you look other places, you know, for people that have, you know, annoyed you in the past, not Red Bull, because they didn't really do anything. I mean, again, when Christian Horner, when he took the questions at Sky Sports, he was a bit in the blind, and I think Max Verstappen was as well, and that's why he came across so, like, rapidly, you know, and so quite, like, you know, he came across, you know, like all guns blazing to the, you know, when he was being interviewed, because he was almost like, well, I don't really understand why this decision's coming my way, because it really just happened out the blue. I mean, the decision happened, as I said at the start of the episode, sorry about that, mid-cough. The decision happened when the cars were in Parc Fermé. So obviously, you know, the Red Bull crew were around the podium, as the Ferrari guys were, and obviously as the Mercedes guys were. The Mercedes, Lewis Hamilton was cheering and celebrating, and it was almost that point where he went up to Usain Bolt, and it was when it said at the bottom, the FIA have decided to give Max Verstappen a 5-second penalty for, you know, the illegal track manoeuvre. Obviously, all four tyres, you know, past the white line, and it's almost like they made the decision quite late on. You know, this had happened like about a minute earlier. You know what I mean? They've taken a long time to come to this decision. They waited until Max was on the podium as well to make the decision as well. It plays into what I said before about, you know, kind of mugging Max off, making an example of him, you know, in front of the telly, because obviously they know that the cameras follow them up to the debriefing room, and all cameras would be on Max Verstappen, they'd be on Sebastian Vettel, they'd be on Lewis Hamilton, and they'd also be on Kimi Räikkönen, who's obviously going to be, you know, storming through the pit lane because he wasn't very happy. It just plays into that point again that I said, you know, mugging Max off. It wasn't right. If the FIA were going to make a decision, it's almost like they should have made it, you know, then, and then they should have given Red Bull time to appeal. And if anything, the tables could have been turned at that point. Yeah. Because, I mean, I know this is kind of not really working in Ferrari's favour, because they might have been the ones that looked like a bit of a mug, but Ferrari could have been the ones that allowed on the podium. Max could have been told he wasn't on the podium. Red Bull, they could have appealed it behind closed doors, and then it could have happened afterwards, because if you remember Silverstone 2016, obviously the race that me and Jordan went to, but you know, you don't really know that much because for one British week, that's all I'm going to say. But as you know about that, obviously Max Verstappen passed Nico Rosberg, but obviously there was a podium miscommunication, obviously, where it ended up that Max Verstappen took third place, and obviously Nico Rosberg took second place, with the winner obviously being Hammer Time, and behind the scenes, that's when it was appealed. Obviously, again, Red Bull, clean decision, clean penalty, clean challenge, and then obviously Max Verstappen got the second place behind closed doors. So that really decision, that was good, obviously, because obviously, I mean, those three were on the podium, but that was done, you know, with a correct appeal. I just don't think this race was handled very well, John. I mean, yes, as you said at the start, it was illegal, I can't say that, a bad manoeuvre, a bad manoeuvre. Yeah. Yes, it was a penalty, you know, cause and position. It was a penalty, you know, thing that happened, but it just wasn't handled very. It just wasn't handled very well, and I think that almost just proves into what's happened here. It wasn't handled by the FIA very well. It's almost like when they should have gone north, they should have gone north and they went south. They should have gone right and they went left. They should have gone, I don't know, to Australia and they went to the Antarctic. It's like it just wasn't. I don't think it was handled very well by the FIA, and I think that's one of the decisions that was, because yes, it was a penalty. Yes, Max Verstappen did cut the corner, and yes, there is no double standards here. There's no, kind of promoting Max and saying that he wasn't in the same boat as anyone else that's cut the corner. But the FIA, I think, were at fault this weekend, Jordan. I think that they didn't handle this weekend very well, because when they should have been looking, they weren't. And when they didn't have to be looked, they did. When they got something, they blew it out of proportion. They made a decision afterwards. They made the wrong decision. They made the right decision very late on. Just nothing really went in the FIA's plan. I don't think they really had a good grip on it.
It was almost rushed in a way of like, okay, like what do we do? Because like Ferrari would have been on their case, because they would have seen like, well, hang on a second, he's just cut that corner. Whoa, like, yeah, let's go back. And then I would imagine Ferrari would have been able to appeal that. I reckon the FIA would have let Ferrari appeal a decision to put Kimi Räikkönen on the podium after that race.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I would have thought that, and then because obviously Ferrari and the FIA and obviously Salo are like friends. So I think if that was the case, if Ferrari had appealed at the end of the race to say, well, Verstappen overtook him off the circuit, then they would have went, all right, okay, you're right. So we're going to award Kimi Räikkönen with the podium, but it didn't work like that. It worked in the opposite favour of Max Verstappen was in the wrong. And also, I just want to say as well, if people are saying how if Räikkönen move was, let's say, vigorous, or let's say, well, I would say it was almost like too aggressive. Why didn't Kimi get a penalty for that? That's what I want to know. Funny that, isn't it? Very, very funny.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, if he's going to defend, if Max said he had to go wide to avoid making contact with Kimi, so therefore Kimi was in a very dangerous position, not giving Max enough space. So where's Kimi's penalty for that?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
exactly. I mean, exactly what you said, Jordan. I mean, if you're going to punish Max, punish Kimi as well.
Yes.
It might not have been that, I don't know. As I said earlier, I mean, the FIA, I just don't think they handled anything very well. They kind of jumped on the first decision. Really, they didn't give it enough time. It's a little bit like what you're told when you're young. When you get some pot of money, don't just rush into the first thing that you see. Give it some time, think about it, think about what you want to buy, manage your money, things like that. Don't just jump into the first decision. I think that's what the FIA did. But anyway, obviously, that was a very long topic. This is a massive thing. It's, it was a big decision. It kind of took the spotlight off what was supposed to be a really nice US Grand Prix, and it was as well. It was a really nice victory for Lewis Hamilton. As I said, Sebastian Vettel's lost the World Championship now, for sure. Wiped his hands, as I said, the last chance saloon. It was in the US, now it's actually gone. Fifth place or higher, and when I say higher, I do mean probably first for Lewis Hamilton in the Mexican Grand Prix. It doesn't matter where Sebastian Vettel finishes. As I say, Lewis can finish fifth and Seb can finish first. It doesn't matter. Lewis will be world champion, so he probably is. And it's probably is going to be this weekend. Mercedes won the Constructors. It was a good US Grand Prix. It's just this thing obviously was a massive thing. But obviously, that's where we're going to end the F1 Debate Show for this week. Thank you very much for watching. If you're new around here, please subscribe, like the episode, just keep pushing subscribers. Obviously, all the way through the end of 2017. I'm sure you have a lot of opinions out there when you're watching this episode about what happened. Are you a Max fan? If you're not a Max fan, doesn't matter. Tell us what you think about the decision. Are the FIA in the wrong? Who is really in the wrong? But obviously, everyone, thank you very much for watching. We have been the F1 Debate Show, and as always, see you later.
See you later.